All right, we're going to take a look at 5.5 and 5.6 for this. We're going to start with a monopsony. I have a lecture for it. Then we're going to get into both sheets on this video just so you're good to go on it. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. A lot of it makes sense based on stuff we've already done before, but let's take a look at it. So 5.5, labor unions were organized partly to fight the effects of monopsony. All I want you to basically understand is a monopsony is an imperfectly competitive factor market. So we already looked at labor and perfectly competitive labor and how that played out. Think about monopoly and the unit that we went over for monopoly, and a lot of the similar things are going to play out here, but this one is in the factor or the resource market where a single firm is buying all the inputs, or in other words, one firm is hiring all of the workers in a small town, okay? Callahan Auto Parts, I'll let you look up where that's from. Okay, let's take a look at graphing monopsonies and what it looks like. A monopsony has a downward sloping demand curve, an upward sloping supply curve. They're going to hire at each wage and each quantity along the supply curve. So here is what that looks like. Okay, they're going to hire all of the workers. So here's the workers in a small town, and I'll explain this a little bit more once we get into the sheet. But the firm hires its first ever worker, and they are going to pay him the minimum he's willing and able to work for at $12. So just think it through this process, the supply and the demand. Remember that we will sell something when you were talking monopoly, when you were talking the buyer's max, right? Profit maximization. Similar thought process here with what we're going to do with monopsony. So they're going to hire the first worker for the minimum that he's willing to work for at $12, okay? So that's this first worker right here. As we hire more and more workers, the second worker, he's only willing and able to work if he's paid a higher wage of $13, right? So if we want to hire that second worker, we're going to have to pay him the little bit more of $13 to bring him on. As a result of that, we're going to have to raise the wage of this other guy to $13. I talked about this in one of the senior theology classes, actually. Each worker must be paid a matching wage. Otherwise, this guy is going to be pissed. He's going to end up potentially leaving. So each worker must be paid a matching wage. The firm must pay the first worker the extra dollar. So our total cost went from $12 to now adding 13 plus 1 for an extra $14 that we're going to have to pay these two guys to hire the extra guy. The same thing will play out when we hire the next one. He's only willing to come in for $14. And as a result of that, if he's going to come in for $14, we're going to have to pay each of the other ones the extra dollar to match the wage to get them all on $14. Same thing for $15, and so on and so on. So in a monopsony, the marginal revenue cost, the MRC of each worker, is their wage plus the additional wage paid to match the new worker's wage. Okay, so we started with here, MRC plus the additional one. So he gets the additional one from him, and him, and him. He gets his additional, he gets his and his additional, so on and so forth. I'll show it to you on the sheet. If you're taking a look at your sheet right now while you're watching this is part B that we're going to take a look at for it. So in a monopsony, MRC is greater than wage. Wage is the supply line. So MRC is going to look a little something like this on this. Now, I want you to think about monopoly and how we did that a little bit, where we have our demand and our MR, and it looked a little weird. Like if we didn't have this MRC line, our MR line went something down like that. If you remember that, and the S was our MC, so we would go there, but we'd produce up there. A similar process is going to play out right here in a monopsony where the MRC is greater than the wage, okay? So what's going to happen right here is we're going to hire until MRC intersects with MRP. That's our demand on this one. So at this point, but rather than what we did with the monopoly where we went up until we went to the demand line, we're going to go down until we reach the supply line, because we're going to pay workers a wage that they're willing and able to work for. A monopsony is a price maker or a wage maker, right? That's important for us to note. One large firm hires all the workers. The market's imperfectly competitive. We must increase wages to hire additional workers, but we also have that power to not have to hire them up here. We can hire them a little bit more on the supply line because that's what they're willing and able to work for, okay? So This is the exploitation of labor. At 8 workers higher, each worker is worth $17 to the firm. However, we're only paying them $13 a pop. Okay, let's take a look at this. Monopsony. A monopsony is an imperfectly competitive factor market where only a single firm buys inputs. Okay, one single firm hires all workers in a single labor market. Monopolies have to pay a higher wage to hire additional workers. I already talked about that. They face an upward sloping supply curve because the firm already, I'm going to move this over here for you. Because the firm already hires most of the workers in the market, it will have to pay a greater wage in order to attract the remaining workers. You have to pay a greater wage to attract the remaining workers in the market. Okay, very nice. All right, why is the MRC of workers greater than their wage? Going back to this little chart that we were kind of looking at when we got to the worksheet, or when we got to the slides. When hiring new workers at higher wages, the firm must give its current workforce a raise to match the wage of the new worker. You have to give them the wage to match So, MRC of each new worker is their wage plus the raises paid. To the old workers. Okay, I will show you what I mean by that when we get to the questions that it's asking about. Okay. If you go down perfectly competitive versus monopsony, a couple of the differences that we can note for this is a perfectly competitive one. Supply is the MRC. Can I even do this way? Sure, why not? All right, supply is the MRC. They hire workers at a quantity where MRP equals MRC. And then wage equals MRP, or MRC, excuse me. There it is. Sorry for the formatting. Okay. If we were to look over at the monopsony now, MRC is greater than our supply in the monopsony. They're also going to hire a few workers in a perfectly competitive market because MRC is greater than the supply. And finally, they're going to, as far as the wage versus MRP is concerned, wage is less than it. Okay. All right, let's move on to this. This is probably going to help explain that concept that I showed in the slides a little bit. Part B. Okay. So this is our first worker that we hired. We hired him for $10. Our total labor cost is $10. Our marginal resource cost is $10. If we want to hire on the next worker, he's going to have to be paid $11. Well, what we're going to have to note is that not only is he going to make $11, but this previous guy is also going to be making $11, okay? So to find our total labor cost, it's 2 times 11 equals 22. But that would make our marginal resource cost the difference between our two total labor costs, or $12. Same thing right here. We'll go 12 times 3 to hire this third worker, or $36. And the difference between the two of them is 14. We could do that same thing the entire way down. Make sure you put dollar signs. I'm having to use my mouse to do it, so it's not going to be perfect. 4 times 13 is 50, and the difference is 16, okay? So you're going to notice that this just increases by 2 the whole way, and this one, you got to multiply 5 times 14, 6 times 15, 7 times 16, and so on and so forth. Because what we're ultimately seeing is that when you want to hire the next worker, you have to raise the wage of all the other workers to what that guy is making, okay? So let's take a look at this a little bit. Part C, here's that process. Again, we are going to choose to hire somebody where MRC and MRP intersect one another, but then we're going to go down to the supply line where we will pay them. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Right here, it shows our MRP line. We're going to have to fill out this. Let me see what we got. I'll do this whole thing with you. All right, our labor cost right here at a wage of $2 is 2. That puts our MRC at 2 as well. Now we're going to have to multiply from here. We'll go 2 times 3 is 6, and the difference between 6 and 2 being 4. Okay, 3 times 4 is 12. The difference between those is 6. 20. 8. 30. 10. Right? Again, the difference between the two. 6 times 7, 42. The difference, 12. This is so painful having to write this, guys. 8 times 7 is 56. 14. Okay. So now that we've got that, let us start to draw what we need to draw. We need to draw our S and our MRC curve, okay? I think probably the easier one for us to graph is probably going to be the wage, where we will start at 2. And we'll go up, and it'll look a little something like that. Not going to be perfect, but actually that's not bad. Okay. The next one, our MRC, is going to go up 2 each. Okay, so try your best to draw this one. Something like that. Love that this made it like that. Dude, that's like the best thing I've ever drawn. That says a lot. Okay, so you can go ahead and label this one MRC. You can go ahead and label this other one your supply line. And we've got that, and that looks great. Not perfect. This needs to be actually probably a little bit more up there. Like that. Yeah. Yeah, buddy. Okay. How many workers will the firm choose to hire? Again, we are going to choose to hire where MRC and MRP intersect one another. Okay, so how many workers is that? That is 4. And the wage that they're going to be paid. You are not going to just simply do the wage that is right there. Okay, rather you are going to go down until you meet this right here. So at a wage of 5, right there, on that supply line, those workers are going to be paid. You also can note this by just simply looking at this up here, $5 wage. Okay, but I think it's important to note you're kind of doing the reverse of what you did with the monopoly. You find an MRP equals MRC, then you're going down until that supply line. How does the number of workers hired by firm B compared to the number of workers that would be hired? So where would we hire the workers right here? Well, right here, we would choose to hire 5. We would do it where the supply and the MRP intersect, and we would hire them at a $6 wage rate. So that is the difference between them right there. Okay, you could go ahead and try to do this one. Okay, noticing that where they're going to choose to hire the auto workers for this one is going to be the place where S equals MRP. Ooh, sorry, not the most perfect. You can fill out the monopsony one from there. And actually, you are good to go as far as monopsonies are concerned. Let's talk about cost minimization now. Cost minimization. We looked at this a little bit whenever we were referencing cost maximization. And let me pull up my notes. We talked about cost maximization. And I think we should be great to go from here. Okay. Some of the rules that I think are important for us to note on 5.6. When choosing which input to buy next, the firm will always choose the input that provides the greatest MP over P, which we'll take a note of right here. Okay. So if we're going to choose to do this, we're going to choose to bring in the first one, the labor, right? If you have a choice between labor and capital, how you're going to combine those. We're going to choose to do this one first. Then we'll choose to do capital next because the MP over P is 30. Then we'll choose the labor. MP over P is 30. Then we'll choose capital. Then we'll choose labor, where it's 20, and capital, where it's 20. And from there, we're going to stop, okay? When a firm stops buying, the MP over P of the last unit of each input should equal each other, and they do right there. Think back to the profit maximization. So we're going to choose to minimize our costs at a combination of 3 units of labor and 3 units of capital. This will make a little bit more sense, actually, as we go through this right here. All right, so going to part B, you're going to take your MP. I'm not even going to attempt to draw out this formula. You're going to divide it by MRC. So 9,000 divided by 1,000 is 9 units. 8,500 divided by 1,000 is 8.5. All right, explain the firm should hire a unit of labor before it rents a unit of capital. Well, labor, the MP over P, is greater than our unit of capital, okay? So there's our 1 unit of labor right there. After that, our unit of capital and our unit of labor are equal each other. So the firm should hire a unit of labor before it rents a unit of capital because the first unit of labor is the greater one. What is the cost minimization combination of capital and labor for this firm? What's cost minimization 1? Okay, so right here now we have 9 and 9. They're equal each other, but I found somewhere else where it's equal to each other on here too. So we're going to hire capital. Then we'll hire our next unit of labor at 9. So we've already hired there, there, there. Now we have 8.5 and 7.5. Let's hire another unit of capital. Let's hire another unit of labor. At 7.5, 7 and 6, we'll hire another unit of capital. Then we'll hire another unit of labor. 5 is greater than 4, so we'll hire another unit of capital. Then we'll hire the unit of labor at 5. And now we have 2 and 2. So we'll finish it off right there. So we have 6 of labor, L, 5 capital. All right, and for this last one, it says, if labor productivity is cut in half, what is the new cost minimizing combination for this firm? So take the MP over P, and we're going to divide each of those in half because productivity got slashed. MRCs for labor because it got cut in half, so let's do the same thing. Okay, so we'll take capital, capital, capital. Okay, I'm seeing another one right here. Okay, we'll go labor. So 3 capital, 1 labor. Capital, labor, labor, labor. And we get to 5 where both of them are at 2. And we'll finish her off right there. So 5 of each. You can do the same thing for this one. This one. You're going to notice that you don't have this part C and part D on there. That's because I didn't include it. So that's all you need to know for 5.5 and 5.6.